Hello, BookTube. From me and the Bean. Hi, baby. How you doing? You'll never guess what I did first thing this morning. I went to the Brattle Bookshop. I know. I went back to the Brattle Bookshop. There's rain in the forecast, maybe even busy rain, wind and gusts and whatnot. And it's been in the forecast all day, but the best forecast, the best that I could determine, is that it would be cloudy and threatening rain in the very early morning, 8 or 9, but that there might even still be bits of sunlight, and that the actual concerted threat of rain wouldn't happen until sunset or later. That turned out to be absolutely true. And the reason why it matters, for those of you who might be new to the channel, might not know what I'm talking about, the reason why it matters is that the Brattle Bookshop is a great used bookstore in the heart of Boston. It has 3 stories, it's crammed with books, and they're all reasonably priced, and their overturn is great, so there's new stuff all the time. But in addition to that, there's a sale lot outside. There's a lot next door that has thousands more books that's entirely dependent on the weather. Right? Because if it's raining or snowing, or if it's going to in the next half hour, then the Brattle will tarp over some of those carts and move all the rest of them indoors, which isn't the same thing as browsing al fresco. So for 50 years, I've been a customer at the Brattle for a long, long time. You have to check the weather in order to go to your favorite bookstore, which is a little bit weird, but you get used to it. And it turned out just fine. It was a very mild morning. There's no ice on the ground at all. There's no snow anymore anywhere. It was a mild morning. It was not raining, so all the carts and walls were open, and I got to browse to my heart's content. And I found a bunch of books that I want to show you, including some treats, some real treats here. The first one is we're going to go through this together. We're going to explore this book together. This is edited by William Harmon, and it's called The Classic 100. It's a trade paperback of the 100 classic favorite poems. So you've got The Rime of the Ancient Mariner here, and the Robert Frost, and all this stuff, Gather Ye Rosebuds While Ye May, all that sort of stuff that you would expect is in here. And I don't think I've ever had this anthology before, but the minute I saw it, these were all dirt cheap. These were all $1. So the minute I saw it, I realized, well, that would be really good for Poetry Thursday. Let's sample some of these classics for Poetry Thursday. In addition to all the, the lesser-known stuff that I find, why not read some of these? So we will be going through a lot of this together, starting on Thursday. I'll pick a poem on Thursday, and we'll read it together. Then we have a big stack of murder mysteries, because in exactly 1 week from today, March begins. And March is March Mystery Madness here on BookTube, a great BookTube event created by Elizabeth at Lizzie Faye Loves Books, and hosted. There's a huge number of hosts this time around. I forget what year this is, but March Mystery Madness is a venerable BookTube event, and it gets more popular with every year. I'm one of the co-hosts this year, and I love it. I just love a murder mystery. I love the infinite variety of them. I love the infinite pace and tone of them. And a year ago, not quite a year ago, a few months ago, the Brattle got an enormous library of murder mysteries, obviously from the same person, who carefully put them in plastic library jackets, and who collected a large number of signed copies, and then obviously died. Who would give up that collection for any other reason? And if they died, then their heirs or their next of kin or whatnot sold them, put them in boxes. Off they went to the Brattle, and they were the talk of the shop for a bit. They were the big acquisition, gigantic number of murder mysteries. And eventually a lot of them found their way out into the sale lot at the $5 wall. And one of the games of the Brattle Bookshop sale lot is sort of surfing the downgrading of books. So if you're an habitué of the lot, you will look at a $5 book and you'll think, well, I don't really want to pay $5 for it. I'll keep an eye on it and see if it goes all the way down to $1. Believe it or not. If you go often enough, you can actually do that kind of price surfing. And when I saw that whole wall of murder mysteries, I thought, well, there's hundreds of them. There was hundreds and hundreds of them. I thought some of these would be of interest, but not for $5. I got some of them at $5, but for some others, no. I'm not even gonna prowl through these one by one at this. It's a waste of time to do. And sooner or later, sure enough, they all got to the dollar carts. They are all now at the dollar carts, the ones that are left. And that's a lot more tempting. It's a lot more tempting to get a hardcover murder mystery for $1. And the timing of that was perfect because they got to the dollar cards just in time for March Mystery Madness to be coming up. So I got a ton of murder mysteries I want to show you, including one paperback. Aside from the Classic 100, I got one paperback, and it's a mass market paperback, and it's one that I've mentioned before on this channel. This is Jane Langton, her Homer Kelly murder mystery series. And this is God in Concord, which I haven't read since it first came out. This has illustrations. All of these Homer Kelly mystery novels have illustrations by Jane Langton. They're quite good. Some of them are quite good. Some of them get very elaborate. My favorite Jane Langton book does not take place in New England. It takes place in Florence. It's called The Dante Game. Don't have a copy of it, but the illustrations in there are incredibly good. This is all about commercialization coming to Concord, coming to Walden Pond. And Homer Kelly, of course, is Jane Langton's homespun detective. Doesn't do much in the way of detecting. Neither him nor his wife do much in the way of detecting. These are very much atmosphere books. They're very much meant to remind you, to capture a certain part of New England, right? The Gardner Museum or Memorial Hall or Emily Dickinson at Amherst or Concord for the Transcendentalists and whatnot. This book very much does that, if I remember it correctly. The murder mystery itself is kind of unsatisfying. But Homer Kelly is distressed that commercialization is coming to Concord. And then somebody ends up dead and a murder mystery goes from there. I haven't read this since it first came out. This came out, I think, in the early 90s. When did this come out? 1992. I haven't read it since then. Then 1992 is 20 years ago. So that's a long time. Or no, it's not. It's 30 years ago. Oh my God. 1992 to 2002 to 2012 to 2022. Yeah, it's 30 years ago. Oh my God. Well, I haven't read it in a long time, so I need to revisit it. But all the other mysteries are hardcovers, including this one, which really, really touched me just a bit. This is by Kate Ross, and it is cut to the quick. This is the first Julian Kestrel murder mystery. He's a kind of Georgian Beau Brummel figure who is well-placed in society and decides to investigate a crime in an English country house. It was finding this that gave me the inspiration for a little murder mystery that I want to write myself in March. And the reason why it gave me a little pang is because Kate Ross did a handful of these books, I think 3, and then died. So this is a signed copy of the first Julian Kestrel novel. When she did this, people were expecting she had 20 books. People were expecting this is the new Amelia Peabody series, and it'll be 30 books long. And instead, we had just a handful of them, and then no more. No more Julian Kestrel stories. So I really like these books, but again, these came out as green-spined Penguin mass market paperbacks. This also would have been the 90s. Yeah, 1993. I really like these, but have not read them since then. So this is the first one. This introduces us to Julian Kestrel and his brutish manservant. So I'm very much looking forward to it. Then the other day, I found a murder mystery by John Maddox Roberts, the SPQR series, set in ancient Rome. And what was it called? A Matter of Law, something like that. And it was late in the series. A lot of the later volumes in the series I have not read, even though the first book in the series, which in America was called SPQR, I really, really like. I wholeheartedly recommend it. Even though I love the first 3 or 4 volumes in the series, I haven't read most of the later ones. And when I found that hardcover the other day and hauled it here on this channel, I said that I looked pretty good and didn't see any other SPQR novels. And of course I was wrong. There were 2 more. At least 2 more. There are probably some still that I missed. But I found 2 more of them. I'm going to read these for March. These are new to me, even though they're not new books. First one is The Year of Confusion. Lovely cover there. This is the protagonist here is I always get his name wrong, so I want to get it. Oh God, they don't give me his name in here. It's Decius Caecilius Metellus is the character's name, but I want to make sure that I've got that right. No, you're not going to tell me. All right. Well, anyway, this novel is late in the series. What is this? Yeah, number 13. I haven't read this. I think the crux of the murder mystery is the decision that Julius Caesar made to remake the calendar, to create the Julian calendar, and a murder mystery wrapped into that. But that's number 13, and then I also found number 5, which is, I think, the first book in the series that I did not read. I think that John Maddox Roberts American contract originally in the 90s ran out at number 4. So I don't think I ever saw number 5. This is Saturnalia. Kind of not quite as good a cover. Does this give me his name? Did I get it right? Decius Caecilius Metellus. Yes. He's won himself a reputation as both an investigator and, most unfortunately, a bit of a playboy, having been banished by his family for sometimes embarrassing activities to a rather leisurely lifestyle on Rhodes. He is puzzled to be suddenly and unexpectedly summoned home to assist in an investigation. I think these novels are great, and one of the reliable features about them is a sprawling comic set piece at the end of every book. There's a sprawling comic set piece at the end of every one of these things that I know of. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe some of these later ones he dispenses with that. We shall see. I'm always up for a good Roman murder mystery. Then we go from ancient Rome to relatively contemporary New Orleans. This is a book that I, again, haven't read since it first came out. Did this come out in the 90s? Are these all 90s books? 2000. This came out in the year 2000. This is A Density of Souls by Christopher Rice, Anne Rice's son, who at the time was a super hottie. He was just a boy writer who, I might have scorned, I might have mocked at the beginning while you got your foot in the industry because of your famous mother. But he's a terrific writer. So when it comes to that, I might get my jokes off, first of all, but then if I read the book and the book is good, then I don't care how you got your foot in the door. I couldn't care less. If you're a good writer, I couldn't care less. It's if you're not that it bothers me. But he is. So what have we got here? The Density of Souls is a story of 4 young friends in New Orleans whose lives are pulled in drastically different directions when they enter high school. Meredith, Brandon, Stephen, and Greg, once inseparable, are torn apart by envy, secret passion, and rage. They quickly discover the fragile boundaries between friendship and betrayal as they form new allegiances. Brandon and Greg gain popularity as football jocks, and Meredith joins the bulimic in-crowd, while fragile Stephen is treated as an outcast and is the target of homophobia in a school that viciously mocks him. Their struggles are fueled by generations of feuds and secrets hoarded within their opulent Garden District homes, and soon 2 violent deaths disrupt the core of what they had once shared. So you've got a bit of New Orleans atmosphere like his mother, a bit of school fiction, and also a bit of A Secret History by Donna Tartt. So I read this when it first came out, but very much stand a reread, although probably not in March. I don't think this comes close enough to being a mystery, a formulaic mystery, which is the kind that I love best, for me to read it in March, especially when there's a lot of other stuff to read, like this next one. Oh my God, this beautiful thing. This is by S.J. Paris, and it is called Treachery. Look at how lovely that is, with the gold, that the lettering is raised. And in Elizabethan England, there is no greater crime than treachery. Look at how lovely that is. Also signed. And this is a big, generous historical novel that stars a sleuthing team like no other. Giordano Bruno and Sir Philip Sidney are friends and also a sleuthing team in this book. I have read, I think, one S.J. Paris Bruno novel, but it wasn't this one. So this is a huge thing that I'm just going to love. I mean, I'm just going to love this. I don't think I have any of S.J. Paris in ebook form, for instance. I find Bruno an incredibly fascinating figure in history, and also Philip Sidney. I find it a fascinating figure in history. So, the best of both worlds. And that was the blast of murder mysteries. Good Lord. A pile of new murder mysteries. I'm going to make a separate bookcase, fill it with murder mysteries, and just use that as a playground in March. Although, in March, I will mostly be reading new releases. I'm just going to overindulge in murder mysteries in the month of March. Then this next one I found, somebody went to the bother of putting a plastic cover on it, because the original is really, really well loved, and I just couldn't pass that up. I couldn't pass up a book that has obviously pleased people so much. Even though I already have a copy of this, I grabbed it anyway. This is the N.C. Wyeth illustrated Creswick, The Adventures of Robin Hood, but just battered all to hell and gone. Somebody did their best to protect it. John Holmes is the book plate in here, his book. So maybe this was his when he was growing up. Who knows? It looks like somebody tore out the opening plate of the book, but all the other color plates are in here. Let me get you another one there. There's the merry men getting ready to steal from the rich and give to the poor. The Creswick Robin Hood was the introduction to this character and his world. The N.C. Wyeth illustrations. The combination of Creswick and Wyeth was the introduction to this character and his world for, I would say, thousands and thousands of young people of a certain age. You would have had to been, you would have had to been a young boy reader probably 60 years ago to really get a volume like this and treasure it. I was completely suckered by how well loved this thing was by whoever owned it the first time. So I grabbed it. It was dirt cheap, so I grabbed it. And then those mysteries were all treats, especially the Bruno thing. But the last thing I want to show you was the real treat of this visit. It's a little bit rough shape. I will be reinforcing it. I will be lovingly restoring it because I don't ever plan on letting this go. This is a book that I had years and years ago. I checked. This is not my copy, but I'm so happy to have it again. This is Shazam from the 40s to the 70s. It's one of these things. Some of you will remember, if you're of a certain vintage, you'll remember there was a Batman and a Superman volume from the 30s to the 70s. I have both of those volumes here, but I had and got rid of it a long time ago. I never thought I would see it again. This is Captain Marvel. This is the original Fawcett Captain Marvel. Billy Batson, as a little boy, is given a magic word, Shazam, which he says. Of course, can't call it Captain Marvel now because Marvel Comics had a Captain Marvel of their own. But when he says the magic word, he transforms into Captain Marvel, the world's mightiest mortal, who has Superman-style powers, and it goes on all sorts of great adventures. Captain Marvel was a Superman ripoff originally, but outsold Superman for a huge chunk of the 40s. So a successful Superman ripoff. And the powers that be at Fawcett thought, well, if one Captain Marvel is good, then many will be even better. So they started multiplying Marvels. There were 3 other Billies. There was Thin Billy, Fat Billy, and Hillbilly, who all became Lieutenants Marvel. And got Captain Marvel-style powers. But most importantly, for Captain Marvel spin-off characters were the 2 that you see on this cover. Mary Marvel, Billy Batson's twin sister, who gains the same kind of powers, and Freddie Freeman, who becomes Captain Marvel Jr. Mary Marvel is Billy Batson's twin, but when she says the magic word Shazam and gets incredible superpowers, she does not transform into an old man, into an older person. She stays herself. For some reason, Billy Batson does not. Billy Batson is a boy. He's a little boy, but when he says the magic word, he transforms into an adult, who C.C. Beck sort of partly patterned on the actor Fred Murray. And Freddie Freeman is a cripple. He's an orphan and a cripple. He uses crutches, and he sells newspapers and lives in a shack down by the river. But when he says the words Captain Marvel, he doesn't say Shazam. He says Captain Marvel. And when he says the words Captain Marvel, he transforms into a superpowered teenage version of himself. It's still Freddie Freeman. Looks the same, doesn't change his body at all, but he's not crippled anymore. He's invulnerable. He can fly. He's got the wisdom of Solomon and whatnot. And Captain Marvel Jr. was his name. Yes, in case you're wondering, he is a superhero who cannot introduce himself. He cannot say his name to you in the crowd. If he saves a busload of nuns and the crowd says, "Wow, who are you?" he can't say, "Well, I'm Captain Marvel Jr." because the minute he says the words Captain Marvel, a lightning bolt will transform him into Freddie Freeman. So he doesn't just say, "I guess I'm Junior." I don't know. But he got his own comic book, Captain Marvel Jr. #1. It was wildly successful. He was a wildly successful spin-off character. Very different look. He had longer hair. He has blue costume instead of red. All the other Marvels have red costumes. And his original artwork was by Manuel Raboy, and it's meticulously beautiful. It doesn't look like comic book artwork at all. And he looks like a lanky teenage boy. He doesn't look like a comic book character. It was an amazing thing. It wasn't like anything else that you could buy on the newsstands, and it made Captain Marvel Jr. A success. To the point where it fascinated a young boy named Elvis Presley, who not only liked Captain Marvel Jr.'s hair, but he liked the costume. He liked the flash and patter of the whole thing. Captain Marvel himself seemed a little bit old and square to this little boy, but not Captain Marvel Jr. And I have a feeling that origin story for part of Elvis Presley's stage persona is going to get some screen time, amazingly, in the upcoming Tom Hanks Elvis movie that may or may not make a huge star out of its lead, Austin Butler. Austin Butler, some of you may know, he was the star in the TV or the Netflix adaptation of Shannara, of Terry Brooks' Shannara novels. But in this movie, he plays Elvis Presley. And in the bit that I've seen, when we get flashbacks to Elvis as a boy, he's reading Captain Marvel Jr. and he's wearing a little golden lightning bolt as a sort of a quasi costume. It'd be fun if they add that in. That is definitely part of the Elvis mythos. But needless to say, as you can tell from this digression, Captain Marvel Jr. was a huge hit with me. To the extent where not only did I think it's funny that he can't say what his name is, I also just fundamentally did not understand why he would ever transform back to Freddie Freeman. Right? He looks exactly like Fred. He doesn't change his appearance. So if he's worried about a secret identity, if he somehow values living in a shack by the river and selling newspapers for poverty wages, if he somehow values that existence, well, he could still have it without anyone wondering. He could still put on shabby, unwashed clothing and even use a crutch if he needed to, if he felt like he needed to do that. But he wouldn't need to be crippled anymore or vulnerable anymore. Why would he ever transform back? Billy Batson, yes, this guy can't sell newspapers or chum around with other kids, despite what may happen in Shazam movies. So Billy Batson I can understand. And maybe Mary Batson, maybe she would have some sort of reason to transform back into a vulnerable girl, as opposed to a perfected version of that. But Freddie Freeman has a whole bunch of reasons never to transform back into a civilian identity, and yet he regularly does. I found it all fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And if I remember this volume correctly, and I know that I do, Captain Marvel Jr. is all over this volume. This gives you reprints of original Captain Marvel adventures in Fawcett, and then Fawcett started losing money on the Captain Marvel titles and just let them lapse, just let them go out of print, and waited a long time, a couple of decades, I think, or 15 years, before they brought the Marvels back. So there's a gap there, and this follows that whole storyline with all of their famous villains and whatnot. I was not all that much of a fan of the Zachary Levi movie. Not all that much of a fan. It's very awkward that Billy Batson becomes a different person when he says his magic word. We don't actually know in these original C.C. Beck and Otto Binder issues. We don't actually know who Captain Marvel is. He's not Billy Batson. We don't know who he is. He's not like Captain Marvel Jr. and Mary Marvel, where they're the same person. They just gain superpowers. Captain Marvel is a different person than Billy Batson, and we don't know who that is, and that's a little weird, but trust me, it's even weirder if your approach to this whole character is that when he says his magic word, Billy Batson is suddenly inhabiting a grown man's body. That's even weirder. Believe me. The more you think about it, the more you realize how weird that is. It is skirted for laughs in the original Captain Marvel, in the original Shazam movie. It's skirted for laughs very awkwardly, in my opinion. Very awkwardly. And it can't help but happen again in the next movie. I have no idea how the next movie is going to be, but it was an absolute treat to find this thing. I will reinforce the hell out of it, and then I'll put it on the shelf with my Batman and Superman volumes, because that is terrific. So there you go. That was a Brattle trip for the pre-reign. So we have Shazam from the 40s to the 70s. We have a battered old copy of Robin Hood. Then we have a bunch of murder mysteries. Treachery by S.J. Paris. No idea how many of these things exist as ebooks. Then Density of Souls by Christopher Rice as a much younger man. Saturnalia and The Year of Confusion by John Maddox Roberts. Mystery set in ancient Rome. Cut to the Quick by Kate Ross. The first of, I think, 3 Julian Kestrel mysteries. We have The Classic 100, a collection of classic poems that we will be hearing about, and God in Concord, another Homer Kelly murder mystery. So not a bad trip to the Brattle. Probably the only Brattle trip I will make this week. But you never know. I say that sometimes, and then my resolve wavers. We shall see. Anyway, those are my books for today. So I will wrap this up for now, and I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.